All right, so I'm back with another video. Um, this one's about anxiety and what it is, sort of what happens, what I think happens, how to sort of manage it, um, what to do and what to recognize in those situations. I think too how to stop it. I think in some instances knowing how to stop it, because if you're able to recognize why or when you get anxious, then you're able to adjust and maneuver situations and put yourself in situations where you're more likely to feel less anxious. Um, so again, this is some shit that I made. Uh, so basically, this is called the anxiety matrix. So let me explain what this is. The red line. So first, it's three rings. You have the outer ring, which is called the feel good zone. Then you have this middle ring, which is called the mindful zone. And then you have this inner ring, which is called the trouble zone. And so within each ring, there's different levels of positive or negatively charged thoughts, kind of like, I guess, ions, or I think that's what it's called in science, ions, positive and negative ions. I can't remember. But for this instance, we're using positive and negatively charged thoughts. So if you see in the feel good zone, it's all positively charged thoughts. In the mindful zone, there's positive and some negative stuff. And then in the trouble zone, it's basically all negative. So feel good zone, all positive, mindful zone, mixed positive, negative, trouble zone, basically all negative. Now, what is the red line? The red line is the flow of consciousness. Now, this is going to be kind of difficult to grasp. I think it definitely does require a degree of self-awareness to be able to be aware of your flows of conscious. And that just, I don't know if it takes practice. I don't know. I think there are certain conditions, but I'll talk about it in a different video. So flow of conscious. So in the feel good zone, the flow of conscious is completely uninterrupted. It's just flowing. It's just flowing. It's completely uninterrupted. And I'll get into what that symptoms, what it should feel like after when I explain. But it's important to note that this is just a singular flow of consciousness, uninterrupted, of generally positive feeling, emotion, thoughts. Generally, there's no sort of like intrusive thoughts. So the mindful zone, the important thing to note too here is that I noted is these arrows. So as you go more inwards, the velocity and the speed of which you're having thoughts also increases. And that's what contributes to the anxiety, is that not only are you having bad thoughts, but you're having a lot of bad thoughts at like an alarming rate. So this mindful zone, things are kind of, they're okay. They're like manageable. You know what I mean? Like it's not as much in the flow as this feel good zone, but it's still good. Like it's still doable. Like you're just, maybe you're a little stressed out or whatever, but it's functionable. Then when you get into this trouble zone, this is where things get pretty bad. And this is where I would say this point right here is anxiety, which I think does have a function, um, which I'll explain totally like in another video. Um, but essentially here your thoughts are moving really, really fast. They're bouncing everywhere. And then they're mostly negative thoughts. I've never had anxiety that was like positive anxiety. You know what I mean? It was like, oh fuck, like I'm just not feeling good. So that's what's essential to know. So then I'll get into the gates after. So here is this diagram, uh, the anxiety matrix. So basically, the feel good zone is all positive. It's temporary. It's short lasting, and the goal is to be in the zone as often and as long as possible. So what is it? What does it feel like? What does it look like? So the symptoms is you're in a constant state of presence. Time doesn't really seem to exist if you're really can catch yourself in a moment of flow. It's like time doesn't really exist. Or like if you look back on a moment where you really caught up in the present moment, it's like time doesn't really exist. It's really relative. It's very calm, and then there's no intrusive thoughts. So the things I think are flow inducing experiences or peak experiences, this is clearly not all of them, but just some of them I thought of off the top of my head. And it's basically anything that engages you with the present moment completely. So like surfing or like snowboarding or like working out or like weightlifting or being with friends or like being at the beach or anything that just completely where you're just locked in on the moment. There's nothing you're thinking about. There's nothing, you're not sitting there thinking like, oh, I have to do this, or I got to do this, whatever. You're just completely in the moment. I think that's flow. Um, and that's the best state to be in. I think it's a peace state. It's a peaceful state. And I think when you're really, really good at it, um, you can learn how to induce it for yourself without actually having to go through peak experiences. Um, and yeah, you can learn how to induce it yourself, because really what it is, it's a feeling in the mind. It's not really about the thing. It's more about the feeling in the mind, that if you understand what the feeling is, you can recreate it. Um, and this is really important. So this is going to be really important after. So then next we have the mindful zone, where there's a mix. So ideally you want to keep this as your default state of mind. And so this is where the first gate comes in, and the gatekeeper is you. So you have the ability to go in and out of flow, peak experiences, and the mindful zone. So the goal here is to have more positives than negatives, and that's how you really kind of keep it balanced. So for example, like if you have, you know, a lot of work stress, if you have a lot of negative relationships, if your family life isn't good, if you have a lot of, maybe you're behind on bills or financially, or if you're in school, you have papers, these are very negative inducing stressors. I don't know, I just call them drag downs, but I call them their stressors or whatever. And this has a lot of potential to create anxiety. And so that's why it's called the mindful zone, because it's important to balance it out with more peak experiences, to keep it even, to keep you from slipping into a trouble zone where you're kind of caught in this anxious feedback loop, um, that can be sort of paralyzing or difficult to get out of. So the trouble zone basically is the last zone. Um, and this is a dangerous zone because it can last like a long time. Like it can last a couple hours, it can last days, it can last weeks. Basically what it is it's a negative thought feedback loop that's just like firing on all cylinders. And that to me is what anxiety feels like. um it's so the gatekeeper, this is the second gate, which is here, which is basically external. It's a little bit, you really have to take a moment of consciousness to try to get back to the mindful zone. And so some of the things that you might experience if you're in this state is like neurotic behavior, irrational behavior, suicidal thoughts, like tense. You might feel really tense, you might feel really down. Like anxiety and depression kind of go hand in hand a little bit. um you might be having a lot of doubts. And so it takes a lot. One, you have to recognize that you're there. And then two, you have to like reach out to someone or make sure you do like a peak experience, whatever you've defined as a peak experience for yourself. If it's yoga, if it's fucking kite surfing, whatever the fuck it is, bro, you just got to recognize that it is that's your thing. And then recognizing that you're having these anxious thoughts, and then you have to go and do that thing. Um, and I think this has helped me. This is why I made this in the first place, because I just needed to kind of visualize what was going on, just and putting it out on paper, like just kind of really helped me like just see, okay, this is what it is. This is what I need to do. Um, so it's definitely a manageable thing. I think we're definitely more prone now to have anxiety. Um, People just have a lot of shit going on, bro. We're not really living how we're supposed to be living. Um, so yeah, so the anxiety matrix, the mindful zone. Oh fuck, the trouble zone. I feel good zone. We want to be here. This is where we want to be as much 24 hours a day, baby. 24 hours a day. This is where I'm trying to be, bro. That's it. Um, I could go into this creating thing. Maybe I'll touch on that. Yeah, I think I might touch on that. So basically, why I put creating or art as like a kind of bold start is because it's a little bit different. I think art and creation is like the ultimate freedom of self-expression. But I think even like really so much could be technically art or creation. Like if I think about it, like if you're surfing, that's technically art because you're so it's just you in the moment. Like if you're snowboarding, you're so like engaged in the moment that you're like carving out the path, or the wave might hit you differently, or like you might take a turn or some shit, or like you're just so in it, bro. You're so in it. You're so just absorbed with it. And I think that's really what art is. But I have another thing that I'll probably do another video on about art and the difference between art and design. But anyways, so I think art in a singular form, really what it is it's an energy exchange between you, your internal spirit, and like the external world, because there's like two worlds, obviously. I mean, three now with digital, but spiritual, physical, and digital self. um but the energy exchange is the energy in motion. That's why it's called emotion, energy in motion. So basically what art is that you're taking energy that's within inside you. It could be sad energy, it could be angry energy, it could be whatever, and then you take that energy and you mobilize it into the physical sense. And that transfer is art basically. um and that's where you achieve that flow state. Like I said, time doesn't exist. There's like a constant state of presence. If you're an artist, like if you've really been engaged with something that you're creating, you could be sitting there creating something for like 4 or 5 hours, and then you might look up and be like, what the fuck? I didn't even see the time go by. It was like so quick. And so it's a very it's a very cyclical or circular motion, I guess. Like it's just one singular, I guess. So this is where it gets interesting because there's also like dual. So this might get into some interesting shit right here. So basically, like think about the word procreate and make love. Um that's why I think like sex. All right, we're gonna talk about sex because sex is art, bro. For people who aren't on game, bro, sex is really art, bro. Like basically what I think though is that if you're doing it correctly, you're not just going there to fuck, bro. Like if you're actually there to like be in the moment with someone else, that's definitely a energy exchange with the other person. And they always talk about this, like in this like conscious community and shit like that, like energy exchange. But that's just real, bro. That's just really real. But basically what it is that it's two beings coming together to have a synchronized like flow state, basically. And if you think about it, it's so crazy, bro. It's so crazy that it has the ability to like create new life. Um, that's a whole different thing. That's another different video. But I think that that's one of the highest forms of creation and art and energy and shit like that. So that's what the dual form of energy exchanges. So you have your singular, just like your regular art shit, whatever. If you're doing painting, whatever, then you get real serious. Um, but you could have like collaborative art and stuff like that too. So maybe it's not just sex, but that's just what I thought of when, yeah. Um, yeah. Okay. So I think you guys got it. If there's any questions, just write that shit. All right. Till next time. Peace. Stop this shit.